There's no doubt that Bikini Bottom's favorite sea sponge is the happiest fella you'd ever meet.
I am a happy sponge.
Despite being exploited by his boss, repeatedly failing to get his license, and constantly getting yelled at.
Hear that, boy? We didn't need to buy a hat. Aren't you supposed to be saving me money?
SpongeBob is a waking paradox who still sees the world as nothing but rainbows and butterflies. So how does SpongeBob stay so happy while getting whacked by everyone and everything? Well, in today's video, we'll take a deep look into the show to finally expose the paradox behind SpongeBob SquarePants. To really understand why SpongeBob always puts on a smile despite living in a world that is hell-bent on crushing his hopes and dreams, we have to take you back to Can You Spare a Dime? In this episode, we see what happens when Mr. Krabs accuses Squidward of stealing his first dime.
Where is it? Where is it? Why? My dime!
Offended that Mr. Krabs would even question his integrity, Squidward quits and spirals into poverty. Being the goody two-shoes he is, SpongeBob takes him in. But it doesn't take long for Squidward to take advantage of his host. And what happens next gives us a peek into the real workings of SpongeBob's mind. He storms into Mr. Krabs' office and rightfully scolds him for letting Squidward walk away without a job.
Squidward's been living at my house driving me crazy, and you're not gonna hire him back all because of a stupid dime!
In that moment, all the pretense falls apart, and we finally see that SpongeBob isn't the simpleton everyone assumes he is. For years, we all assumed SpongeBob was just a happy-go-lucky guy barely a step smarter than Patrick. But this scene completely blows the lid off his best-kept secret. SpongeBob is aware of every single thing. The manipulation, the harassment, and even attempts at sabotage. And if you think we're clutching at straws, the revelation in The Abrasive Side should do the trick. The episode kicks off with a worker fish stepping on SpongeBob, who slept at the bus stop just so he could get on the first bus to Glove World.
I believe I was in line first.
With that kind of dedication, you just know SpongeBob had been looking forward to his time at Glove World. So when a fish asks to cut in line, any self-respecting person would fire off a big capital letter N-O. But SpongeBob hands over his spot without even blinking. As if that wasn't enough, SpongeBob keeps giving up his space to other fish till he's at the back of the line. Sandy comes along with a task, then Mr. Krabs also comes along with an errand, and in no time, SpongeBob doesn't just miss out on the first bus, he misses all the buses. At the end of the day, SpongeBob goes home crying, and in a moment of clarity, he laments his inability to say no to anyone.
It's true that I can't stand up for myself.
Being a slick pet, Gary literally orders an abrasive side for SpongeBob. And as soon as he slaps that sucker on, his whole world changes. All of a sudden, SpongeBob now has what it takes to tell people no when they come with their errands. But he doesn't just stop there. The new abrasive side of SpongeBob dishes out nasty insults to everyone. And when it makes Patrick cry, SpongeBob decides enough is enough and meets up with Sandy to help with his problem. With her massive muscles, Sandy helps him pull off the abrasive side and ships it off, returning good old SpongeBob back to normal.
Hey, what are you doing, you crazy bushy-tailed rodent? Hey!
But here's the thing that bothers us about the Abrasive Side episode. When you actually watch it again, SpongeBob didn't do anything wrong. Mr. Krabs, Sandy, Larry, and basically everyone else selfishly pull him in every possible direction while he's desperately trying to get to Glove World. They see him struggling, they know he's overwhelmed, but they ask anyway because they know exactly what's going to happen. SpongeBob will say yes. We've watched this version of him for years now. The guy who stays cool no matter what life throws at him. He fails his boating test hundreds of times, gets screamed at daily, endures constant mockery from Squidward, and still wakes up every morning yelling about how ready he is. We just accept it as part of who he is. Like his whole reason for existing revolves around staying positive. But when you take a closer look, his positivity doesn't really resemble normal optimism at all. Real optimism grows and changes with experience. It's messy and emotional and sometimes involves a bit of denial. But SpongeBob's version rarely bends. It's like he's locked into a mission he simply cannot abandon. And if that sounds odd to you, just remember how everyone in the Abrasive Side episode is so used to asking him for ridiculous favors. Deep down, they all know that SpongeBob's happiness will remain intact no matter how much they take advantage of him. That's why they panic the moment he stops being overly nice.
I don't know.
This sounds pretty dark for a kid's cartoon, but it fits disturbingly well when you think about it. The entire show depends on SpongeBob's optimism to function properly. So maybe SpongeBob understands that too. Maybe he knows on some fundamental level that he has to keep smiling, that his happiness isn't just an emotion but actually his purpose. This means that SpongeBob didn't suddenly get the ability to trash talk people, but the green patch drew out what was already inside. And the show even gives us a clue in the form of the ending clip. After the whole fiasco with the Abrasive Side, Sandy bags it up and ships it back to the sender. And you'd think that'd be the last we'd ever see of that green patch. But you'd be wrong. Just before the closing credits of the episode, SpongeBob goes to visit his grandma and gets the shock of his life when she turns around. And we see that she also has an abrasive side. Even though the episode ends as SpongeBob screams in shock, the revelation that Grandma Sponge also has an abrasive side proves that his grandma also acts like him. This means the reason SpongeBob never stood up for himself was because of how he was raised. And if we take that message literally, most people know you need those sponges with a harder, rougher side to scrub off the tough stains when doing the dishes. This means that the SpongeBob we're used to was trained to act that way. And if this sounds like a leap, a cross-examination of other important episodes should expose the truth. For example, in Can You Spare a Dime, SpongeBob still doesn't know when to say no to Squidward, who was clearly taking advantage of him.
I know he still isn't looking for work. Don't rub it in.
SpongeBob, where's my lemonade?
And he only gets pushed to the limit after suffering for days. When he finally snaps, he stands up to Mr. Krabs, but that's not all. He also goes as far as calling him a cheapskate crustacean, which is exactly what you'd expect from the Abrasive Side. Take another example in I'm with Stupid. Patrick initiates a plan with SpongeBob to act stupid in front of Patrick's parents just to make him look good. It starts out well, but Patrick gets carried away and begins to treat him like a nitwit, which forces SpongeBob to confront his friend.
Patrick, could you let up on the insults just a little bit?
Instead of dialing it back, Patrick acts like SpongeBob was insane for asking for some decency, which forces him to scream as he dashes out of the house. The same thing repeats itself again in Krusty Love. SpongeBob tries to help Mr. Krabs win over Mrs. Puff's heart with expensive dates and lavish spending. SpongeBob could clearly see that that wasn't what Mrs. Puff needed. But he's too much of a chicken to tell his boss, at least until Mr. Krabs' confusion pushes him past his limit. And he breaks character.
You want me to run down to the store and buy Mrs. Puff something she doesn't need?
We could go on and on listing the times SpongeBob starts off as a pushover before finally getting pushed to his limit and letting the words fly. This pattern clearly shows that SpongeBob is hiding something, and we believe that something is his real personality. After years of watching SpongeBob as the goofiest character in kids' animation, discovering he might be a pretender feels like a slap on the face. But until you've seen the episodes we're about to break down, you'll want to keep an open mind. To start things off, we're going with the time SpongeBob and Patrick adopted a baby on Rockabye Bivalve. On a perfect day in Bikini Bottom, SpongeBob and Patrick come across a lone baby scallop. Giving it the name Junior, they immediately take the baby scallop in and try to raise it as husband and wife.
If I was a mom, this would be kinda shocking. Just call me Daddy!
Despite the good start, things quickly turn sour when Patrick takes advantage of the situation by claiming he's the dad. So he dumps all the work on SpongeBob. This neglect pushes SpongeBob to exhaustion, and after hours of tireless work, SpongeBob finally snaps and lashes out at Patrick. In a similar fashion, we see the same thing happen in Best Day Ever. This time, SpongeBob's day is ruined by Mr. Krabs, Sandy, and Patrick as they all take advantage of him, yet again. When he finally goes to see Squidward, he thinks to at least be okay with the squid. But all he gets is Squidward nagging about his stupid clarinet. And to nobody's surprise, SpongeBob's true self makes an appearance and he yells at Squidward.
Pull yourself together, man! I came here for a concert, and darn it, I am gonna get one!
One unique thing about Best Day Ever is that we see him lashing out at a whole group of people, which is a far cry from the always happy SpongeBob we're used to. These episodes don't just expose SpongeBob's habit of revealing his true self only when pushed to the edge, they also show how characters like Mr. Krabs, Patrick, and Sandy consistently exploit him for their own benefit. They don't care if he's busy or if he's on an important mission. Once SpongeBob is around, they know they could get him to do pretty much anything they want. And he would do it with a smile on his face. This kind of abuse is only possible because SpongeBob has allowed it to fester for so long that everyone just accepts him as the guy you go to for ridiculous requests. After uncovering this aspect of SpongeBob, he might feel like a harmless fella who gets exploited by his friends, but that's where the deception begins. SpongeBob might act like an everyday pushover, but that's only because he wants you to think he is nothing but a pushover. You could make the argument that SpongeBob's unshakable joy is basically his plot device. In a town packed with absolute lunatics, you can't have a main character who's totally rational and logical. Otherwise, he'd just spend all his time complaining about everything, and they might as well rename the show after Squidward instead. But here's where things get interesting. SpongeBob's endless optimism starts to make the whole situation feel less wholesome when you go back and watch older episodes. There are tons of subtle moments showing just how aware he actually is. Unlike Patrick, SpongeBob has plenty of intelligent moments throughout the series. He can do complex math on the spot, he's skilled at karate, he has a great sense of humor, and he's gifted in art and music. He's learned that in Bikini Bottom, being too smart or too serious only leads to misery. Squidward proves this perfectly. He's intelligent, logical, and completely miserable because of it. So SpongeBob does the opposite. He pretends not to notice how unfair things are. He overcompensates with smiles and laughter, keeping his world bright and predictable. And in the Abrasive Side episode, when that fake calm finally cracks, we get to see our first real glimpse of what happens when the mask slips. That personality that emerges, cold and sharp and brutally honest, doesn't come from nowhere. It's been buried under all that cheer for years. Now, we know some of you are thinking this is a bit of a stretch. How dare we suggest that one of the most optimistic characters in the ocean has been faking it this whole time? But there are actually plenty of moments where he shows how smart or frustrated he really is, only to end up miserable because of it. And the only reason we confirmed all this about SpongeBob is because of what happens in the episode Breath of Fresh Squidward. The episode starts with a confused Squidward waking up to see SpongeBob and Patrick in his bedroom going crazy.
What are you two morons doing?
Waiting to watch the sunrise with you.
At 3:47 in the morning?
Squidward goes into a fit of rage when he realizes that SpongeBob and Patrick have been sneaking into his house for months to watch the sunrise. To stop them from intruding on his privacy, Squidward installs an electric fence, but it electrocutes him seconds after putting it on. While being electrocuted, we see the dark cloud in Squidward's brain clearing out, and he instantly starts behaving strangely. Squidward is suddenly as goofy as SpongeBob and Patrick as he follows them to the zoo. There, they enjoy their time petting animals and taking rides. The next day, Squidward surprises SpongeBob at his home, where he is obnoxiously helpful to the point where he does everything for SpongeBob. At the Krusty Krab, Squidward's overly helpful attitude scares customers, so Mr. Krabs sends him to the kitchen, where he makes Krabby Patties to the shock of SpongeBob. We see SpongeBob steadily getting frustrated with the new Squidward, but things reach the tipping point when he wins Employee of the Month ahead of SpongeBob. Immediately, Squidward becomes everyone's favorite. SpongeBob is overcome by sadness, but when he sees Squidward and Patrick becoming close friends, he loses it and screams at Squidward, even going as far as throwing him out of his house. You'd think that having a happy Squidward is something someone as cheerful as SpongeBob would understand, but his reaction to Squidward's change in personality reveals a lot about his true personality. Going by what we just saw, it's safe to assume that SpongeBob's always cheerful demeanor is artificially manufactured to make him well-liked in Bikini Bottom. This means that for all the years we've watched SpongeBob, we've never really been acquainted with the real SpongeBob SquarePants. You might think Breath of Fresh Squidward only shows us what happens when SpongeBob isn't the center of attention, but the episode does a lot more than that. It also gives us a sneak peek into SpongeBob's real personality when he drops the act. This hidden personality really comes out in the episode Dumped. After a fun day of playing tag with Gary, SpongeBob notices a strange attraction between Gary and Patrick. When the time comes for SpongeBob and Patrick to go home, SpongeBob suddenly realizes that Gary is missing. So he goes over to his best friend's home to ask for his pet. On seeing how attached Gary is to him, Patrick suggests that Gary stay over at his place, and SpongeBob agrees. The next morning, SpongeBob realizes that Gary's only attracted to Patrick, and this is where SpongeBob allows his true personality to take the front seat. He immediately gets jealous seeing the attention Gary gives Patrick, and when all his plans to get Gary focused on him fail, he resorts to forcing Gary to go home with him. Patrick refuses to let Gary go, so they let the snail choose who it wants to stay with. And to the shock of no one, it chooses Patrick. After shedding a few tears for Gary, SpongeBob tries to replace him with other pets, but they fail to fill the void Gary left. Suddenly, Patrick shows up at his home asking to do some laundry, and immediately SpongeBob spots Gary. And of course, he bawls his eyes out. SpongeBob tries one final time to entice Gary back home, but all it does is make Patrick see how pathetic he is. The episode pretty much sums up SpongeBob's true personality as someone who lives for validation from others. He knows the only way to get people to shower him with praise is to play the cheerful clown. It doesn't matter if his friends exploit him, as long as they keep praising him, SpongeBob will keep up the act. So yeah, we think SpongeBob is smart enough to understand the reality of his world. He chooses to smile because the alternative is living like Squidward. Intelligent, unaware, and absolutely broken. That's why the Abrasive Side episode really just reveals his true nature that was hiding underneath all along. That tougher personality didn't give him new power to insult people. It only released everything he'd been suppressing. It was the moment SpongeBob stopped pretending, but the town couldn't handle that version of him. So, like every other time, SpongeBob himself forces a reset. SpongeBob might come off as the cheerful idiot who doesn't know how to say no, but now we know it's all a ploy to get people to like him. If you stuck around to the end of the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel, or you'll get an abrasive side like SpongeBob, and it won't come off no matter what.